Welcome to the Moviegoers Society podcast brought to you by Nerdtropolis. I'm your host, Sean Tajipour, the mayor of Nerdtropolis. And joining me once again is my co-host, Drew Munhausen, the professional media and movie mastermind. And Drew, I must say, welcome to the Ice Age.
Welcome to the Ice Age. We are in the Ice Age here in Houston, at least.
I think most of the United States is dealing with an Ice Age. It is wild what we're dealing with. Everyone's, we're in the 20s. Everyone else is dealing with negatives, maybe colder. It's crazy what's going on. But the Ice Age is happening as we do this.
I have in-laws who travel down to Texas every winter to get away from the cold. And then, we still get these freezing fronts like this. So it happens.
It happens. But I guess we're prepared for it. I don't know. Some people aren't, but everyone's got to be careful out there this week when you're listening to this podcast. I know it's crazy all over the United States and a lot of snow, a lot of ice. So just be careful out there. But for those who are new to the Moviegoers Society, welcome to 2024. This is our second episode within the new year. And in this podcast, we dive into the world of cinema, exploring everything from beloved classics to the latest blockbusters. And we're now on episode 26. This is technically season 2. Drew, are you excited for season 2?
I am. I'm super excited for season 2.
And we have a double header today. We're going to train as a lethal beekeeper with Jason Statham, and we're going to have a sing-off with some Mean Girls. But before we get into all of that, we want to make sure that you can connect with us online. You can find me and Nerdtropolis on every single social media platform you can think of. You can find me at Sean Taj. Nerdtropolis is just at Nerdtropolis. And don't forget to visit nerdtropolis.com for your daily dose of movie news, reviews, interviews, and trailers. And Drew, where can they find you? We're not contributing to Nerdtropolis.
You can find me at Drew Munhausen on all the different social media platforms and weekly over at Fresh Out the Podcast.
Also, don't forget to catch up on our past episodes. Like I said, we're on episode 26 now, so that's a lot to catch up on. It was a great year for films, a lot of good stuff. And then also tune into my podcast, Nerdtropolis Mayor Presents, which is on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, our YouTube channel. Check out the Nerdtropolis YouTube channel. It has been growing like crazy. We're throwing things up there from our podcast to my interviews that we're doing. I just dropped one this week, Destroy All Neighbors, which is a Shudder film featuring Alex Winter, unrecognizable Alex Winter from Bill and Ted and Lost Boys. Some really good stuff there, so definitely check that out. And Drew, like I said, we're middle of the Ice Age. I couldn't make it back in time, but I did make it back in time from my amazing trip to LA, which it's just mind-blowing, and I'll share a little bit of that. But I went to LA for the Critics' Choice Awards as my second year as a member, which is exciting. But there was a couple things I wanted to do. I took my mom as my plus one, which was super exciting. We went to the Jimmy Kimmel show, to a live taping of that. And Natalie Portman was the guest, which was awesome. So that was super cool to experience. And then we also did a live taping. We did a taping of Night Court. We're in the audience and they're using us for our laughter. So we wanted to do these things. I wanted to see what entails these productions. It's night and day when it comes to late night TV to a sitcom. It's just wild. And it was pretty cool to see a Big Bang Theory reunion on Night Court. And I'll probably talk about that a little bit later on, but it was really fun, but really long. I tell you, if you do a taping of a show, it takes 6 hours to produce 30 minutes.
I believe that. And out of curiosity, for the Jimmy Kimmel taping with Natalie Portman, was she promoting May December, or what was she there promoting?
Yeah, they're doing May December. That's what they were promoting, which is obviously her big movie. Drew, you got to watch and you enjoyed it?
I did. I liked it a lot.
So we had those two experiences, and also we had an awesome tour of Sony Studios and also Warner Brothers Studios. Some really awesome stuff. But on top of that, the Critics' Choice Awards happened on Sunday, and then it was followed by the Emmys. But I will tell you, the Critics' Choice Awards was phenomenal. Big stars in attendance, even including Harrison Ford, who got a great honor over there. And if you go on our website, I have a recap of the Emmys and also have a recap of the Critics' Choice Awards. And the only pictures I really posted so far, maybe just one, I got to meet the man himself, Kevin Feige of Marvel Studios. I spotted that cap and I was just like, no way. Is Kevin Feige really here? Was not expecting him. I don't think anyone was really noticing him. Kind of tapped him on the shoulder. He was sitting down and I said, Mr. Feige, just wanted to introduce myself. He stood up and we conversed and talked about Nerdtropolis. He asked me, how's it doing? And I had to thank him because, to be honest, Drew, Nerdtropolis really wouldn't exist without Kevin Feige. Obviously, I was born a nerd, but the resurgence of nerds did not really happen until Iron Man came out and the start of the MCU. So I definitely had to thank him for that. And I got a selfie with him. I posted that on my Instagram and Facebook, like I said, at Shantaj. And that's probably one of the highlights for me. Saw a lot of people there, but Kevin Feige, Drew, what would you do if you met Kevin Feige?
Stumble over my words, probably not know what to say, and probably accidentally blurt out that I didn't think Quantumania was very good or something. I don't know, something dumb. I did see he was wearing his signature cap, but this one had missed minutes on it. Is that right?
Yes, because he was at the Loki table, and that was why he was doing that. But I even asked him, I said, Mr. Feige, I collect those hats when you release them. When are we getting more? And he's like, I need to get on top of that. That's a good idea. I need to get back and release those super collectible hats. You know, they have a lot of stuff for Marvel, but they have a Kevin Feige collection, which is really cool. And I have all the Kevin Feige hats, which is super awesome. So I guess I give him a good idea to revisit those.
Just going to say, just a quick note about the Critics' Choice Awards, because you all over the Critics' Choice Awards have the Oscar pundits kind of scratching their heads now. You flipped the world upside down, because the big front runner for Best Actor this year, that, you know, it's been kind of assumed that this is Cillian Murphy's year to win the Oscar. At the Golden Globes, you know, he did win Best Actor in a Drama, and Paul Giamatti won Best Actor in a Comedy, musical or comedy. But Paul Giamatti won Best Actor at the Critics' Choice Awards, and now it has all the Oscar pundits questioning, could there be an upset this year? Could Paul Giamatti snag the Oscar from Cillian Murphy, who's been kind of the early favorite? So it's kind of fun to see some things up in the air and some uncertainty about the winners at the Oscars this year, which I say that the nominations haven't even come out yet, but that's just how the awards race works. But it's been fun to see the fallout, so to speak, from the Critics' Choice Awards.
For the Oscars, is it only Best Actor in general, or they break it down?
5 nominees, Best Actor, Best Actress. That's it. No musical or comedy or drama specifications. There's only one. So there will likely be the sure bets as of right now seem to be, you know, Cillian Murphy, Paul Giamatti, and probably Bradley Cooper. But there's some other people circling that are in the hunt, like Jeffrey Wright for American Fiction, Coleman Domingo for Rustin, and a few others that are circling. Leonardo DiCaprio is another one.
Great cast of people, great films. It's really hard, to be honest. I think it's between Cillian and Paul. Actually, little side note is that I have a picture of my mom with Cillian from the Critics' Choice Awards. So that was a really cool opportunity too. My mom loved Oppenheimer. She loved also The Holdovers. So it's going to be tough between the two. I mean, such two great films, totally different performances. I think my vote went for Paul Giamatti. Glad he won. That's such a great film, The Holdovers. Even though I like Oppenheimer so much more, there's just something special, and especially during a second watch of The Holdovers, it shines a little bit more than the first time. Oppenheimer is a big movie, but The Holdovers is just something so special, but some good stuff. But y'all stay tuned to my social media, because I have a lot of cool photos, surprising photos, some selfies, some other pictures, some other people we met. To share along. It was a star-studded event. I mean, you had Robert Downey Jr. out there. You even had Tom Holland out there. Chelsea Handler was a great host. I actually loved it. Ki Kwan was there. Tom Hiddleston, obviously. So big studded night that followed up with the Emmys. And so a lot of cool stuff. So I'm excited to go back next year, and it's great to be part of the Critics' Choice Association. But I think it's time we go check on this Beekeeper that hit theaters. That was a movie that Drew and I got to see together, which is sometimes a rarity, but we did, which is a David Ayer film that blends action and comedy and does feature, actually, surprisingly, an A-list cast to me. I said this is John Wick with Statham starring in it, pretty much. It's kind of a John Wick film with Jason Statham's charm. The movie does have some really fun fights and adrenaline pumping action. And I love seeing Jason Statham in almost anything. You can put him in a bad movie, he makes it really watchable. Make him in a good movie, it makes it even better. Drew, are you a long-time Jason Statham fan?
I definitely am. I've actually seen, like, when I look through his filmography, I'm surprised I've seen like most of his especially the action movies that he's the lead in. I've seen a majority of, it seems like. So yeah, I'm a fan, and I definitely have some commentary on his performance here when we get into it.
Yeah, there is a lot of fun to be had, a lot of B puns. Like I said, some good casting. I really enjoyed it. There's this movie, Beekeeper and the Mean Girls, which in the same weekend they get released, and it's two different types of films. And I love these types of genre films, but man, oh man, it was kind of hard for me to really love it as much as everyone else. The whole theater was having a great time, which is actually pretty cool to see. I wonder how they are like if you watch a John Wick movie, because I feel like this is a rated R film, but it was kind of toned down to me. I kind of wish they increased the stakes, increased some of the action. I wish we even saw some crazy car action and some other maybe crazy stunts, but there's not really much more than it's more hand to hand combat per se, and maybe some bullets and some explosions. And that's really what I wanted to see more of. But Jason Statham, action man, he is the guy that can lead any film of yours.
Yeah, and this movie is interesting, right? Because yeah, it's like John Wick light is the way I've been describing it. Like there is some violence. I can see why it was rated R. They definitely don't lean fully into the R rating or as much as they could have. But the tone of this one, I think, is a lot lighter than the John Wick series in general, which there is comedy in the John Wick series at times, but I feel like this one was not afraid to be a little over the top at times with its storyline and what it's doing. Like the villains are super over the top. There's the Josh Hutcherson kind of plays the main villain, but there's a few other smaller versions, or almost like his henchmen or people that work for him. They're all over the top and cheesy. And the thing that's interesting is like Jason Statham somehow manages to play this really straight and serious, yet you're also he's fully aware of the type of movie that he's in. So despite him playing it super serious, it still somehow plays into kind of the cheesy nature of some of the things going on. And I think that that's a really interesting thing that Jason Statham is able to do, right? Like he can be, a villain or a hero really in a Fast and Furious franchise and be be funny while being serious, but then he can also take a movie like Wrath of Man, which was a Guy Ritchie movie from a couple years ago, and like kind of elevate that movie to something better than what it could have been, and he's really good in it. So I feel like he's, despite him having his kind of action persona that we've really come accustomed to over the past 15 plus years, more so that he's been taking leading roles. Gosh, I guess closer to 20 years now, if you really look back at it. But yeah, I just find it really interesting how he's able to maintain his character, but play it within different tones. And I feel like that's unique to him.
I think he's the action star that just plays himself, and he's just super likable.
Mhm.
Like the Arnolds and the Stallones. I think he is our modern day version of that. Obviously not as big. He did at some point become as big as that almost, but like he's kind of leveled out a little bit, but still he is uh on that level of just playing himself, and he's so likable. Love Josh Hutcherson in this and Jeremy Irons. Their scenes together are really fun. I wish we got more of that and less of the FBI agents that were kind of taking us away from Jason Statham and the rest of the plot. It was losing momentum whenever Statham wasn't in it, and it was a treat when Hutcherson and Irons was on it. But other than that, when you had the FBI and the other ones, it was just a waste of my time, and I felt like that's where the film suffers from pacing.
I totally agree. I feel like the whole FBI storyline and what's going on there is it's just too much in what this movie is trying to do, and especially the relationship of one of the FBI agents being the daughter of somebody that Jason Statham was essentially trying to protect or avenge, and the way that they work that it really doesn't work. It's not as fleshed out as it should be. It's just yeah, it's a little much. But when it's the action scenes and Jason Statham is doing his thing, you really don't care about any of that. You're here for it. And it's worth noting, this is the type of movie where like he'll take on multiple people with guns by himself with no weapons and like still manages to win. And clearly you're like, if just one person picked up a gun and aimed well, he'd be done. But what fun would that be in an action movie like this?
Are you ready for a Beekeeper 2.0?
Hey, I would watch it. I'm not gonna lie. Like, I we talked a little bit on our last episode. This last episode was the Night Swim episode, I believe, and we talked a little bit about dumpuary and all that. And this is also kind of like a prime dumpuary movie. I hate to be that way, but that being said, like I had a lot of fun at this. This is probably not that I have a whole lot that I've seen so far. We're only a couple weeks into the new year, but this is easily the best movie of the year that I've seen. And, you know, it's not a very high bar, but I had a great time with this. It's far from perfect. There's a lot of things that you could nitpick, but like it's not trying to be more than what it is. And for that, if you're looking for something to go see in the middle of January, if you need to get out of the freezing cold and get inside into a theater, go see it. It's totally fun.
What's your rating for this film, Drew? What'd you give it?
I think I give it either a 3 or 3.5 out of 5 is what I'm leaning towards. Maybe like it's a solid 3 out of 5.
That's where I'm at with that 3.5, or actually 3 stars for the Beekeeper. And you were saying this was your favorite film so far of the year. And as we move on to Mean Girls, I'm gonna say I actually liked Mean Girls more than the Beekeeper, surprisingly, which edges it out for me for the best film of the year so far, as we're just getting started. I will say I have not seen the original Mean Girls movie, so walking into this,
oh, Sean, do yourself a favor. It's great.
I know, and that's surprising. So like now we have this musical adaptation with the twist, obviously on the 2004 classic, but it's also based on the actual musical that hits Broadway from time to time. So we're presented with a musical. I don't do musicals really, not a fan of it, but I actually really enjoyed, you know, this movie blending all the humor and music and the teenage drama. Lots of fun for me. I thought it was hilarious. And yes, I have not seen the original film, so this has encouraged me to hopefully catch it. I believe, I don't know, maybe it's on Paramount, Netflix. Someone's got to have it to. Hopefully, they didn't take it off any streaming services, because they do that all the time.
This was supposed to be a straight to Paramount Plus movie. It was developed to be streaming exclusive, but obviously all the streamers are losing money and they've changed their tactics, and so this became a theatrical release, which good decision because it did really well at the box office this weekend, and there's nothing really coming out of note in the next couple weeks. So like there is some groundwork laid here for Mean Girls to kind of keep on trucking along the next week or two.
As you mentioned that, as I'm playing the movie back in my head, as it does feel like a Paramount Plus streaming movie, but it's well done. It's really fun, and you know, it might surprise people that aren't fond of musicals. It manages to take the numbers and make them bearable and enjoyable. There might be a couple too many musical numbers, just because this movie does get close to the 2-hour mark. I believe the original one was only maybe an hour and 30 or so. And then so this one's sitting like an hour 52. And so you got an extra 20 minutes, and it does get a little draggy at some point. So that's where my tolerance for musicals was getting tested towards the end, because it is a very predictable film as it gets towards the end. But I loved it. You know, Mean Girls explores the harsh and competitive atmosphere of high school, and it focuses on this new student, Katie Caddy. You know, they changed her name. I love that. Navigating the teenage popularity, and you know, the musical does add some fun to it, especially in the beginning, not sure where it was taking us, and it quickly gets us through the story. Pretty cool. I love the cast. I love the new faces, the young faces, but I also love seeing, you know, Ashley Park, John Hamm, Jenna Fisher, and Busy Phillips in here, and obviously Tina Fey is the mastermind behind this. I love seeing that, and Tim Meadows is back. I like seeing him pop up in anything. Who was your favorite adult cast in this?
I actually do like the little bit that John Hamm shows up in this. He's like barely in it, and it's kind of random that he is there, but he made me laugh. And then I always like Tim Meadows and Tina Fey, so it was nice to see them returning to their roles. I believe they're both playing the same roles that they play in the original movie.
That's what it seems like to me. I have not seen it, so I'm assuming yes.
I know Tim Meadows is. I'm trying to remember if Tina Fey played the same character.
I think so too. I think they're just, you know, replicating the first film in musical format. And the young cast is really
she's
great.
The same character. Confirmed.
Makes sense. It's a brilliant way to do it, especially get some of the older audience back in here. Do you have a favorite young cast star? There's a few in here that were really great. And
I would say Renee Rapp is probably the standout for me, who plays Regina George. But yeah, no, I take it back. I'm going to
What's her
destroy her
names? There's a
name.
lot of names in here that are really hard to say. It's a very
Well,
exotic name.
it's the girl who voiced Moana, who Ali Cravalho. I don't know if I'm saying it right, but she played she's the friend in the movie. This is terrible. I'm getting all of my my tabs here confused.
She plays one
I'm
of the
going
early
through
on
all
friends
the.
that befriends Caddy in the movie. Um,
She
and
plays Janice is her name. So and I thought she really stood out. And then Renee Rapp, who plays Regina George, is pretty good.
our
This
star is what Angry Rice. And I was like, why do I know her? Why do I know her? She is in the Spider-Man films,
right.
and she plays as a Betty Brant, I believe.
So here's what I'll get into, Sean, because you asking about like the characters and who I liked is like kind of what gets into the crux of this movie, and what I think is the most interesting part of the discussion, right? Is first off, this is a really interesting pathway that this movie took to get on screen. And I was researching. It's kind of interesting right now that we have Mean Girls and The Color Purple both in theaters right now, because both of them are originally books.
And Wonka, let's mention Wonka, I believe, in here.
Well, Wonka is at least an original film. What I'm saying is that Mean Girls and Color Purple, well, Mean Girls is based on a book called Queen Bees and the Wannabes, and it's like a self-help book for parents helping their teenage girls navigate like cliques and such in high school. And then that book was made into a movie, Mean Girls, which was then turned into a Broadway musical, which now in turn has been turned into a film version of the Broadway musical. And the same thing happened with Color Purple, right? It was a book, then Steven Spielberg made a film, then they made a Broadway musical, and now there's a film version of the Broadway musical. There's a few other of these that I was kind of researching, like, are there any others? Book to movie to musical to movie musical, and there's a few, like Hairspray was a movie that then they made a musical of, and then made a movie of the musical. Little Shop of Horrors and kind of a similar boat. Mary Poppins was, they had the Disney film and then they made a musical based on that. There's a few of these, but it's interesting we have two of them in theaters at the same time. Now, that being said, the original Mean Girls movie from 2004 had some people in it who really went on to be big stars. Like, Lindsay Lohan was a huge star at the time, and it's kind of a shame that she's gone more off the grid, because she really had the makings of a movie star back then at that time. Like, obviously Rachel McAdams has gone on to be a huge star. You've got people like Lacey Chabert, who plays Gretchen Wieners in the original movie. She's like dominating Hallmark movies. She's in like every single Hallmark movie and the holiday movies and stuff on that channel. Lizzie Kaplan's gone on to do great things. Amanda Seyfried, of course. Amy Poehler, Tina Fey, Tim Meadows, like all these people that were really notable in the original. And a big problem I had with this version of the musical version of it is I don't feel like any of the young actors or actresses really stand out as much as those stars did back in the day. Like I said, Renee Rapp is decent as Regina George. She played this role on Broadway. She wasn't the original Regina George on Broadway, but she played it for an extended period of time. So
Well,
she's
that's a
obviously
fun little fun fact. I didn't know about that, but you're right.
Yeah,
you're right. Like the
yeah.
cast. But to be honest, we didn't mention this. I actually really loved. I believe his name is Jaquel Spivey. He plays the other friend. I actually thought he was part of the best one in that film. Like, he really pops in and does stuff in the background that makes you laugh. And when he pops in, it's really funny. And I thought he was really a standout with his charisma and just stealing the show time to time. That was really fun. I want to see more. I wanted to see more of him. I thought he made the movie actually more bearable at the same time.
I agree. And it's like, I don't know though. It's tough. It's tough because you're going to compare this to the original, even though this is a musical. And I just kind of feel like the original it's more than a cult classic. Like, it's basically a classic of our generation at this point. And it's very funny, and I can understand why they made a musical of it. I did listen to some of the soundtrack of the Broadway musical, and the songs are just way faster, louder, bigger sounding in the musical in the actual stage musical version compared to the film. Honestly, and I don't think it was my theater, but at first I was like, do they not have the sound turned up loud, or what's going on here? Because the song sounded a bit more muted than you would think for it being a big musical, but it just almost seems like some of the music is downplayed a little bit compared to like a Broadway musical. Maybe that's just the translation of not having a live band in there with you. I don't know, but
No,
there
I think
was
you're
something
onto
about
something because it's
this.
like more they were having like a conversation with the music. It's more as the music was just put in place and they're having a conversation, which is the musical numbers. It wasn't really a big performance per se. It was just them progressing the story in song form, I think is what it is. And that's why, which is kind of a shame. But it attracted me a little bit that it didn't go that far as a musical. Maybe that's why I enjoyed it more too, that it wasn't that big and grand and it was just them kind of singing the script out pretty much and just had music behind it. But I think both. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, that being said, like I liked the movie. You know, it's like it's easy to nitpick because you have a lot to compare it to. Like going back to the Beekeeper, I have nothing to compare that to other than it's like a John Wick, you know, not rip off. I don't even want to say rip off, but it's like, you know, a John Wick-esque action movie.
It's definitely not John Wick's. It's not a John Wick ripoff per se. I want to mention that because the story they created and the reason for everything is it's more original than you would think. It's just more of there's a revenge aspect to it, and that's where we're coming at when we're talking about it's John Wick like. But the reasoning behind it is completely different to me, and there's a lot more to it. A pretty good lesson in it too, because it's about hackers at the same time, and some of the stuff that people in real life have to deal with. And that's the sad part of the Beekeeper is the realistic nature of what people deal with the crazy hackers and spammers out there that are taking advantage of the vulnerable.
Yeah, and Mean Girls being an adaptation of a Broadway musical, which is an adaptation of a film that came out in 2004, kind of opens itself up to more criticism because you have a lot of things to compare it to, which I try not to do too much. Like this is a film on its own, a musical, and like I said, I enjoyed it. So at the end of the day, I had a good time. I think it's an okay movie. It's not the best big screen musical I've seen by any means, but I had a fun enough time. It's just nothing really leapt out at me in this as much as like the original movie did. Nothing really wowed me. And even the song that I thought was the best, which I personally thought there's a song called Revenge Party that I thought is the best one in the movie. And if you listen to the Broadway soundtrack by comparison, it's way more catchy and poppy in that version than it was in the film version. So it's interesting some of the choices that they made to almost tone some things down. There's one song that is a lot more catchy in the musical and they made it more of a ballad in this one. You know, there's just things like that. And I understand you got to change things to make it work in a movie that maybe it doesn't work the same way it works when it's on stage. So yeah, I don't want to sound like I'm tearing this movie apart because at the end of the day, I enjoyed it. It's just, there's just a lot going on here. There's a lot when you're a musical that's based on multiple things.
It's still a fun time to be had. The whole audience was having a great time. I gave this, I think, 3.5 out of 5 stars. I liked it a little bit better than the Beekeeper, just because I guess it was a little bit different. I definitely have to watch the original one, find out. I think
that's the advantage you have is like I've seen the original, so you're comparing everything to that, and it makes it tougher. It really does.
I'm going backwards though, so I could at least enjoy this a little bit. But I think I'm gonna have a good time watching the original, so I have to find time to watch that and find out where it is. But yeah, that's our double header on episode 26. We're gonna crank these out weekly for y'all. This is exciting as we go into 2024.
I do have a question to end off with for you, Sean. That's based on Mean Girls. I was looking at other current musicals or recent musicals that are based off of other films. You've got one that you saw recently, Back to the Future, the musical. There's a Beetlejuice musical. There's Legally Blonde, the musical. There's Shrek, the musical. These are all musicals that are based on popular films, but haven't had a big screen adaptation of the musical version yet. Are there any of those that you would, in particular, that you would like to see get made into a movie? Like after having seen Back to the Future, the musical, could you fathom a a film version of that musical?
I don't think so, because I'm not like pro musical person. Like you have to find me if you had to ask me one movie that would be cool to see as a musical, be 2008's Iron Man movie as a musical would be really fun to see.
Okay, so you're twisting of what movie would
Yeah.
you like to see a musical created of? Okay, I like that. I like that too. I think I know that there have been discussions and Zemeckis and the folks behind Back to the Future, like it's never going to get remade, and I hope it doesn't get remade. I don't want them to, but they have made a Broadway musical of that show, so I'm wondering if that's a like a workaround in the future that they could make a film version of that. And they're like, we're not remaking it, we're doing a film version of the musical. Or you've got Beetlejuice 2 coming out this year, and if that's a big success with Michael Keaton returning, could that then pave the way for them to say, well, let's make a movie version of the musical so we can have more Beetlejuice IP. I just feel like those are sometimes the lessons that Hollywood takes away from these things, which even maybe they're not the best lessons, but
They're
it could
horrible
happen.
lessons. You don't give them any ideas. We have to put that away. No, I don't. Musicals are not just for me, unfortunately. So, but Back to the Future, yes, I did have a review of that. Go check that one out too. But if you haven't yet, check out our previous episodes of the Moviegoers Society. Check out my podcast, Nerdtropolis Mayor Presents, where I interview directors and actors, all on the Nerdtropolis Podcast Network. And once again, Drew, where can they find you?
You can find me at Drew Munhausen on all the different social media channels.
Thanks again for joining us for another episode of the Moviegoers Society. Once again, I am Sean Tajipour, the mayor of Nerdtropolis, and we will see you at the movies.